International Court of Justice holds a hearing to hear South Africa's argument in its request for further provisional measures to protect the Palestinians in Rafah. The presidents of China and Russia signed a declaration in deepening relations and global partnership to serve a new and fairer world order. And after the assassination attempt against the Prime Minister of Slovakia, Robert Fico, the Interior Minister of the country declared that the nation is on the brink of a civil war and asked to ease tensions. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos, and from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba, we begin with the news. In the Netherlands, the International Court of Justice holds a hearing on request of South Africa, which submitted arguments against Israel's incursion in the city of Rafah, which it considers a genocide operation that continues to threaten Palestinians. On Thursday, South African lawyers started the audition at a headquarters of the highest jurisdiction of the United Nations organization. They seek to sue Israel and order a stop to the fire in the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, this Friday, Israel will make known its own position on the conflict that they themselves have been generating since October 2023. It should be noted that in January of this year, Pretoria heard an answer from its complaint filed at the ICJ for the acts committed by the Tel Aviv regime against the Gaza Strip in order to prevent further acts of genocide that harm the welfare of the Palestinians. And while we follow closely on the updates from the International Court of Justice, let's hear to how South African Ambassador Busi Mandosela introduced their new petition for new provisional measures to protect the Palestinians in Gaza.
Sadly, South Africa is yet again compelled to return to this court in recognition of its obligation under the Genocide Convention due to the continuing annihilation of the Palestinian people, with over 35,000 now killed and most of Gaza reduced to rubble. Despite the short notice of this oral hearing, South Africa has traveled here today to do what it can to urgently stop the ongoing genocide. The gravity of the attacks requiring urgent and speedy proceedings to preserve the rights of the Palestinian people, a commitment which South Africa takes seriously.
In this context, the South African diplomat highlighted that it's the lack of countermeasures from the international community what has allowed Israel to continue carrying out the present genocide.
Israel is escalating its attacks on Palestinians in Gaza, and in so doing is willfully breaching the binding orders of this court. Israel similarly breaches the binding resolutions of the United Nations Security Council, erroneously believing from the lack of countermeasures by the international community that it is exempt from having to respect international law. This institutionalized impunity has led Israel to engage in this genocide, which has shocked the conscience of humanity.
And in this context, international non-governmental organizations on Thursday condemned the Israeli army's assault on Rafah and demanded that the international community take urgent action to stop human rights violations. In a joint statement, UN officials and humanitarian NGOs denounced that despite multiple calls by the international community to the Tel Aviv regime to abstain from expanding its ground offensive into Rafah, Israeli troops entered the area on May 7th. In this sense, they also pointed out that the United States bears a significant responsibility for the human rights violations committed by Israel as the main supplier of arms, while reiterating that the evacuation orders is a grave violation of international humanitarian law. And meanwhile, in Palestine, the 76th anniversary of the Nakba was commemorated. Half a century after the date, thousands of Palestinians are still being displaced from their homes by the Israeli occupation forces, with citizens fearing for their future.
En la Nakba anterior no se sintió
In the
esto.
previous Nakba this was not felt. I did not witness it, my family tells me. But now in this Nakba we don't know where we are going. The Jews are insidious. Today a Jewish minister declared that they want to continue displacing us. For them, this land where we are standing is too much for us. In spite of the catastrophes, the destruction and the humiliations, it seems to them that this land is too big for us. They want to take us out of our land, to make everything calm and to stay in our place. This is how the Jews have thought all their lives.
And as part of the commemoration of the 76th anniversary of the Palestinian Nakba, citizens recalled the forced displacement of the Palestinian people by Israeli forces throughout the years.
I witnessed the Nakba or the catastrophe of 2020 and 2023. I did not live through the Nakba of the 48, but I heard about it from my grandparents. They said that there were forced displacements and many migrations. They also told us about the Nakba of the 67 and all the previous events. But today's Nakba, in which we are displaced, we are inhabitants of the Yablia refugee camp. Our houses were destroyed. Our houses and those of our neighbors were demolished. In our family 11 martyrs were killed. We were displaced to Rafah. We were told that it was a safe area and that it had humanitarian conditions. But in reality in Rafah we saw that we have no hospitals, no water, no electricity. There is nothing here.
The United States Central Command announced this Thursday a new crime against Palestine and international law, the anchoring of a floating pier on the coast of Gaza. The pier is a facility with capacity for the handling of weapons and ammunition that has been installed by the best ally of the genocidal state that has murdered more than 35,000 Palestinians. In a press release, Washington clarified that for this operation, no military entered Gaza, while assuring that the pier is temporary and that it will act as a privileged entrance for humanitarian aid, with the United Nations in charge of its distribution. In what appears as a clear disregard for the nation's international waters, no Palestinian authority authorized the construction of this structure. And the Islamic resistance in Iraq reported on Thursday they attacked more Israeli military positions with cruise missiles. Through a statement, they reiterated that the operations will not stop as long as Israel continues with the genocide in Gaza. The Iraqi resistance has carried out a total of 243 attacks against targets of the Zionist regime since October 2023. In this way, as a reaffirmation of its approach to repulse the occupation, the group also confirmed the drone strike aimed at a vital Israeli site in the southern town of Eilat. It is worth noting that they reported on Wednesday the use of long-range Al-Arqab type missiles against enemy targets in the areas of Jericho Valley and the Nevatim Air Base in Beersheba. And now let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. President of China Xi Jinping and Russia Vladimir Putin signed on Thursday a declaration on deepening relations and global partnership to serve a new and fairer world order. In this regard, the 30-page document, which includes 10 bilateral agreements, was signed by the president, guaranteeing strategic interaction between the two leading countries. The ceremony of formalization of this agreement, which will increase the leadership of both Beijing and Moscow in the world, took place after the presidents held a private meeting. In the meantime, they highlighted the model of friendship between their countries and confirmed that they achieved the eradication of the US dollar in 90% of their operations. In other news, the Interior Minister of Slovakia, Xi, declared that the country is on the brink of a civil war and asked to ease tensions after the assassination attempt against the Prime Minister Robert Fico. Xi appeared in the local news accompanied by the Minister of Defense, who declared that there was a suspect in custody. The head of internal politics reiterated that the attack against the prime minister was politically motivated. He also called on the country to de-escalate tensions and asked to stop the hatred immediately before the conflict intensifies. Regarding the Slovakian prime minister's health, he assured that his life is out of danger and that he is recovering satisfactorily from his surgery. In the same way, Slovak President Zuzana Čaputová called for the end of the vicious cycle of hatred in the country.
Let's step out of the vicious circle of hatred and mutual accusations. What happened yesterday was an individual act. But the tense atmosphere of hatred has been our collective work.
In this context, people outside the Banská Bystrica hospital, where the Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico is staying after being shot, reacted to the horror of the attack.
I'm sorry that such things are happening in Slovakia. I'm outraged by it, and I'm certainly afraid that such attacks will be repeated. It's terrible. Such cruel things shouldn't happen in this century.
And Robert Fico, Prime Minister of Slovakia, began his political career in the Communist Party shortly before the Velvet Revolution of 1989, which led to the breakup of the former Czechoslovakia. In 1999, he founded his center-left Smer SD party after being rejected for the ministerial post by the Democratic Left. In other news, Fico stated that Russian President Vladimir Putin would not be arrested by international order if he came to Slovakia. His career over the past 3 decades has been marked by a nationalist and anti-Western vision. In New Caledonia, anti-colonialist agitations have reached a standstill after the deployment of heavy military by the French government. An estimated of more than 2,700 members of the security forces have taken over the French overseas territory, according to France's Minister of the Interior, Gérald Darmanin, who assured they will regain control in the next few hours. In the meantime, President Emmanuel Macron has called for an urgent meeting of his Defense Council. In New Caledonia, a state of emergency is currently in force following strong protests generated over an electoral reform imposed by the French Parliament. And in Argentina, university rectors demanded that the Libertarian President Javier Milei immediately release the funds for higher education expenses. The National Inter-University Council asked the head of state to immediately make effective the 270% increase that he had committed to the operating budget of all national universities. In this way, they denounced that the only payment that was made was to the University of Buenos Aires and qualified the decision of the executive as inadmissible and provocative. In the past month, Milei's government has faced one of the largest mobilizations in history on account of his budget cuts on higher education funding. A Guatemalan court granted house arrest to journalist José Rubén Zamora, who was sentenced to 6 years in prison on money laundering charges that the journalist himself says are politically motivated. The decision was made by Judge Verónica Ruiz of the 9th Criminal Court of the Judiciary, who claimed that although there is no flight risk or intervention, the journalist will remain in custody while 2 other procedures against him continue. Zamora, who was director of the journal El Periódico de Guatemala, claims that the charges are in retaliation for his publications on corruption in the government of the far-right former president Alejandro Yamatei.
Instead of having me killed, they decided to kill me civilly, but to assassinate my reputation, to annihilate my presumption of innocence, and what they did was to expose the regime that we have that is characterized by impunity and corruption.
The International Organization for Migration confirmed the gravity of the current situation in Haiti, where a considerable amount of the population has been displaced by the violence. Meanwhile, arms keep being supplied by the United States to gangs in the Caribbean nation. According to the organization, in the Grecier community alone, south of Port-au-Prince, 4,463 people were displaced after the attacks that began on May 10. In total, the group represents 1,026 families. 92% of them displaced to Leogane, Carrefour, other nearby localities, including the capital. The displaced have taken refuge in the homes of families or friends, with 27% of them going to very precarious locations. The activity of the gangs has not decreased, in no small part instigated by the influx of ammunition and weapons that arrived from U.S. territory. And we have a final short break coming up, but before, we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and also share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. On Wednesday in Brazil, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva announced new assistance measures to address the effects of the heavy rains and floods that hit the state of Rio Grande do Sul. During a visit to the shelters, the president informed all the victims that the government would rebuild the houses lost due to the severe weather conditions that affected 100% of the population. Lula also indicated that those affected would receive a subsidy of $1,000 for material losses. In this sense, the government estimated that 200,000 families would benefit from the new measures. On the other hand, people who became unemployed would have access to 2 additional unemployment insurance payments, and income tax would be exceptionally reinstated for all taxpayers in the affected state. And the Bolivian government has authorized the shipment of humanitarian aid to the Federative Republic of Brazil following the floods that killed 149 people in the state of Rio Grande do Sul. The Minister of Defense, Edmundo Novillo, assured that the aid will be sent from Bolivia on Tuesday, May 21st, based on the support and the collection carried out by several state institutions. Novillo emphasized that President Luiz Arce expressed his solidarity to his Brazilian counterpart, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Moreover, the Minister of Defense recalled the situation that the Brazilian people are going through after the rains and floods.
Especially in the framework of complementarity, in the framework of reciprocity and solidarity. As a Bolivian country and as a Bolivian people, we send humanitarian aid to the brother country of the Federative Republic of Brazil. After learning that due to the heavy rains in Brazil, there have been many floods, loss of crops, damage to homes, and even the loss of human lives that we must regret.
We go now to the world of sports, as Venezuelan cyclist Jonathan Suarez was crowned world champion in the cruiser category of BMX racing during an event held in Rock Hill, South Carolina, United States. In the division that comprises ages from 40 to 44 years old, Suarez finished in first place, followed in the podium by U.S. athlete Justin Wyke and the Lithuanian Gers Jonkus. The Venezuelan cyclist list of achievements also include winning gold in the men's category at the 2007 UCI BMX World Championships and the silver medal in the men's BMX at the Pan American Games in Rio de Janeiro. And amidst the flooding impacting Brazil, sport authorities in the country decided to suspend all local football tournaments known as the Brasileirão. The Brazilian Football Confederation made the decision concerning its competition schedule after the current climate situation in the state of Rio Grande do Sul. The institution accepted the request of 15 clubs out of the 20 playing in the first division to postpone the next calendar weeks, since the priority is to help and support the affected population. The league will return on June 1st with the 9th match day if there are no changes. And the tribute to artist Cesar Rengifo was held by the National Theater Movement that bears his name on a new birth anniversary of the Venezuelan playwright and painter who is remembered for his social legacy. Santiago Corey provides further details.
The Cesar Rengifo Children and Youth Theater Movement performed a musical on the 109th birth anniversary of this defender of cultural identity.
We are very happy with page homage to Cesar Rengifo with this show, comprising national and artist elements. You've been able to see all this day that we celebrate the great mission Long Live Venezuela. The artists choose this selection, and it is a sample of national art. And because we will continue dreaming together with Cesar, we will continue fighting for our beloved homeland.
The movement, directed by Pedro Lander, promotes the participation and training of children and young people in the performing arts to raise awareness and sensitivity of all Venezuelans about national art.
It really means a lot. It's like you enter another world. It's an unexplainable experience, and the people who are there at that moment, living it, feel it.
By performing different rhythms, they stage the distinctive sound of the different states of the country.
Well, it's my turn to represent the Tamunangue of the Lara state. The Tamunangue is a black area. You can call it like that. It's a tradition, like a ritual of promise for Thanksgiving, for believers. And men wear a white shirt, a red scarf, a hat of cogollo, they wear baggy trousers, and women just wear floral skirts and white or other colored shirts. I tell you, you should come and see it, because it's a superb, cool play that we put a lot of strength into it. We gave it a lot of emotion, joy, and we make our best efforts.
Dozens of people recall the birth of the figure who made his work an instrument to make visible the feelings and struggle of the people for a fairer and more united world.
Desde la Cámara de Jesús Romero, Santiago Corey, teleSUR, Caracas.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. But you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.